Hey everyone, I'm here today in the beautiful Studio 2 at Studio 301 in Sydney. I wanted to go over a few beginner editing tips for editing your audio tracks in Pro Tools. I'll be editing a piano and vocal performance that I recorded with Ron and Phoenix. I'll link their socials down below. Ron and Phoenix did a couple of live covers in Studio 1 with me recently, where we did a live tracked piano, the Yamaha C7 we have in Studio 1, alongside a live vocal record. So they were both playing next to each other at the same time in the same room. Shout out to Ron and Phoenix for letting me use this one to demonstrate a few tips today. Alright, so what we have here is a raw audio recording. We have the vocal up the top. We have Elton John high and low, which is a stereo miking technique I used on the piano. And then EBs low and high as well. The EBs are an old pair of C414s by AKG that sound great. I had them as a spaced pair inside the piano with the lid open. And we also had the Elton John stereo pair pointed at the hammers. I learned the Elton John technique from Stefan, so shout out Stefan, thanks for showing me that one. And the EB spaced pair technique I've learned from a few folks here, but for this EB pair, Tom from Studio 301 had the EBs set up over the piano, and I just asked him to leave them there for my session that was happening later that night. So yeah, we have the EB spaced pair and the Elton John low and high pair as well. So the first step for editing this audio would be to do some topping and tailing, which is trimming up the start and the end of the track. So to help me in topping and tailing my performance, I'm going to enable this group over here called Vox and Keys, which will mean that I can edit all of these tracks at the same time. Jumping in, we'll just have a little listen to our audio and find out where we would like to start our topping from today. I think the beginning here is just some sort of chat before the actual take happens around here. Let's just check that out. Yeah, so they're just warming up for the take there. The real take starts just here. Cool. All right, so what we can do is use the shortcut to quickly trim the first section of this song up into my cursor. What we can do is use the A key to trim up to our cursor. Then we've gotten rid of the audio that was just before my cursor. It's not destructive, this editing, so you can go back and grab that sort of stuff if you would like, but I'm just going to keep it how it was there. And then we can do a little bit of a fade. So what we can do is grab the top corner here when we're using the multi-tool. As I mentioned in the shortcuts video, you can use any of these tools individually, but I use the multi-tool most commonly so that I can select audio using the top half and grab audio and move it around using the bottom half. We can also then, if I delete this fade, we can also use this guy to trim our clips up. And if we hover over the top with our multi-tool, we can do a fade as well. We can slide this fade up to the start. We might extend it a little bit so it's a bit more natural. I can click on this and we can hear from the start of the fade. Cool. If you wanted to be a bit sooner for the music to come in and not so much sort of empty space at the start, we can slide the fade across like this. But as you can see, when I keep going and it goes over the audio, it will turn the audio down. We could go there, for example. And then as we move over our fade, you can see that this little box comes up. I have the hand at the bottom, and on the top half over here, I have the box. What we can do here is I can adjust how intense our fade is and what sort of curve I would like it to be. I might do something like this so that the audio does fade in, but I'm not sort of cutting the volume of the start of our audio in that case. All right, so let's grab this guy and move it up like this. That one should sound cool. I'm gonna click on the piece of audio with the grabber tool and press play. Cool, that sounds great. Another way we can fade, which I'll show you guys at the end, is we could select a piece of audio and press the F button. That will fade the selection that I've made as well. So I could select a big piece of audio, press F, and that's the shortcut for fade as long as we have our A to Z button selected over there. Now I can see that there's a few little words that Ron says after the performance is over, which we want to keep in there. I can double click on this and just drag that up to maintain those little at the end there. Let's have a listen. Like the ceiling can hold us. Like the ceiling can hold us. Yeah. Thank you. cool. Let's get those words in there, which is great. All right, so we've topped and tailed our audio here. It's sounding good. We've had a little listen back. So my next beginner editing tip would be to clean up any gaps inside your performance that you may want to get rid of. Now, depending on the type of recording you're working on, you may or may not want to clean up the audio tracks within the performance. In this case, after topping and tailing it, I would just leave the performance how it is. If I start taking out too many things in between the take, it'll start to sound a little bit unnatural. Whereas if you were doing a multi-track recording and you were recording drums, piano, vocals, all individually, I would then go in and clean up in between maybe verses, even cleaning up in between words or phrases, depending on the performance. So to do this, you can simply zoom into your region, and I'm just going to turn off our vocals and keys group to work on just the vocals here. If we did want to do this, we can make a selection of audio, highlight that audio with the mouse, and then press delete. We can delete, and maybe we want to delete this as well. As I mentioned, I'm not going to be editing out these gaps in between this live performance, as I feel like it'll be a little unnatural if the audio suddenly drops in and drops out. So we'll just keep the audio how it is as one continuous file. But just so you know, you can select the piece of audio you want to remove. You could either press B and then delete, but even quicker than that is just selecting the audio and pressing delete. The next beginner editing point I wanted to talk about relates to editing breaths in a vocal. In this case, the breaths weren't too loud. I used a double pop filter when recording Ron's voice on this one, and I haven't used much processing as well. So once you start compressing, maybe you've only used one pop filter or no pop filters. Hopefully you're using a pop filter. But once you start adding processing like compression, then it will bring up these breaths, and you may want to jump in there and trim them down or delete them altogether, depending on the style of music you're working on. Another method that can work really well is to, for example, if this was a breath and this was a breath, we could make a new track that we just move all of these breaths to a different track, and we can turn the volume down, we can process them differently with plugins and so on. Depending on the style of music you're working on, you may want to keep breaths, you may want to turn them down, you may want to remove them altogether. Another thing you can do is keep the breaths on the same track as the vocal, and then you can just turn them down with the clip gain here. There's also a shortcut for using clip gain, which is Shift Control arrowing up and down or scrolling up and down. Then if we wanted to fade those really quickly, we can press the F key, and as you can see, it's done some really little fades in between there. Quick side note, you can jump over to the Pro Tools preferences and adjust your default fade in, fade out, and crossfade settings. We can also highlight this section, Command F, and we have a dialog up here where we can change our default fade settings as well. Then my few editing tips on working with breaths and a vocal recording. Now, another quick note, if you want to move something onto a different track without moving its position, you can hold down Control, click on the audio region, and then drag it to where you would like. It'll keep it in that same position, which is super handy. All right, so that wraps it up today for our quick beginner editing tips in Pro Tools. I hope you got something out of this one. Feel free to reach out and let me know if you have a favorite method when it comes to editing. I always enjoy hearing different people's techniques and tricks when it comes to anything Pro Tools. Also, if you haven't already, go and check out a few of my other videos on YouTube or Instagram TV. If you search for StewGeddesAudio on YouTube or Instagram, my profile will pop up and you can check out my other videos there. Thanks so much for watching, everyone. All the best in your future recording, editing, and mixing adventures. Bye.